I'm talking with Dave Busiek, the news director, about to become the retired news director at KCCI in Des Moines. Dave, thanks for talking to me.
Cliff, it's always good to talk to you.
Dave, you aren't going to remember this, I don't imagine, but I do as I was reflecting on it, that I first met you when you were a reporter and an anchor at WHO Radio many years ago, and I was working at Storm Lake radio station. And then you went to KCCI, and you were there for 39 years, 29 of those as news director. And as you know, we've got a business, a reputation where people move around a lot, especially news director. So my first question is, why did you stay at KCCI so long?
Guess I couldn't get another job. I is the smart aleck answer, but honestly, Cliff, I think at a certain point in my career, I matured and figured out what this business can be about. I honestly, I'd never set foot in the state of Iowa till I moved up here fresh out of college at the University of Missouri. I thought I'd be here for a couple of years and then I'd be off to the network somewhere and off to a bigger market. And the fact of the matter is that what I really like doing is hands-on good journalism, daily journalism. And what I learned is that I was fortunate enough to be at a really good station here at KCCI. We do journalism at a high level. We've been lucky to have good owners during my 39 and a half years here who've always believed in journalism. And, so from the professional side of it, it's just this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to run a good newsroom. And, I had opportunities. I passed on some opportunities to move to bigger markets because I just, after going and looking at them, I just realized that I had a pretty good thing here, a pretty good thing going here. And some of it was kids and family and mother-in-law and friends, and you just make connections. You put roots down in a community. Des Moines has been really great to us, to our family, and we like it here. We plan to stay here throughout our retirement as well because we're just very happy here.
Why did you decide to retire right now, Dave?
Well, some of it, I think, is timing on politics. Iowa's fortunate to be kind of in the middle of the political world every 4 years, and a couple of years ago, it just felt right to me to retire after the midterms in 2018 and turn the newsroom over to somebody else as we get ready for the caucus season, which should be ramping up very quickly in 2019. I've been through 10 caucus cycles as a reporter or a news director here in Iowa, and that seemed like enough. The 2016 cycle was very busy, very involved. We were lucky enough to be able to put together one of the Democratic debates at Drake University with CBS News. It was broadcast nationally on CBS News, and as exhilarating as it was, it just about killed me. It was so much incredibly hard work, and I think I just felt like this is a good way to kind of go out. And we did some debates in 2018, two of them just before the primary, and then another, we did the first governor's debate between Governor Reynolds and Fred Hubbell in October of this year. And I just think that that the time seemed right, both for my age, for how long I've been doing it. And I'll say one other thing, Cliff, and that is that I think as lucky as I've been to been here all this time, I think it's time for the newsroom to have a change in leadership as well. I think it'll be healthy and do us a lot of good.
What would you say your greatest accomplishment has been there at KCCI?
Well, I think that I don't think there's any doubt that I don't know if it's my greatest accomplishment or if it is the thing that I'm most proud of, and that is the staff that we've been able to hire here. We really just have a terrific staff of visual storytellers. We have photographers who've been here 30 years, 3 of them. That have been here over 30 years. We have reporters who've been here that long, and they're really skilled at what they do. We have a good mix of young people as well. But I think the thing I'm most proud of here is to have a good eye for smart, curious, talented journalists, and to be able to bring them in here and to be able to do good journalism on a daily basis.
What would you say the biggest story that you and your department have covered during your career?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that the biggest story that happened during our career, other than 9/11, which is really a national story, was the floods of 1993, when the Des Moines and Raccoon Rivers both flooded at the same time in July of 1993. It knocked out power to all of downtown Des Moines, including the station here. It flooded the Des Moines waterworks, which meant that just about the entire metro area was without drinking water for 12 days. That was a huge crisis. We were on the air for 5 straight days with wall-to-wall coverage of how does this community get through this crisis? You know, the fire department came in and said, if you don't have water service, nobody can be in a building that's taller than 2 stories because the sprinklers won't work. So they basically shut down all the businesses in downtown Des Moines. This was a story with huge ramifications. How do I go to the bathroom and flush the toilet and stay sanitary? How do I tell my kid to brush their teeth? Where do I get water? We've got all this rainwater. What can I use it for? So it was just day after day after day of education that our community desperately needed. 2 or 3 news conferences a day with public safety officials, updating the community, you know, that we carried live. We basically just ran for 5 straight days and before we started to go back to a little bit of regular programming. And just when things started to calm down, President Clinton decided to visit Des Moines. So we had to ramp right back up on day 6. But that was probably the biggest and most important story, just because we knew that everything we were putting out there, our viewers really needed, really were depending on us for information to protect themselves and their families.
You mentioned 9/11. You were the convention chair for the 2001 RTNDA convention, and that was canceled because, of course, the planes crashed into the World Trade Center on 9/11. It was just about to begin, as I recall.
Right.
Can you tell us a little about that time?
Yeah, so I was chair-elect of RTNDA from 2000 to September 2001, and as chair-elect, your duty is to basically plan the national convention for RTNDA. That year was going to be at Opryland in Nashville, and it had the unfortunate starting date of 9/12, 2001. So I had flown down to Nashville on the 10th of September. We were planning to have our pre-convention board meeting on 9/11. And if you've been to Opryland, it's a huge place. So I was watching the morning news in my hotel room, shut the TV off a little bit before 9 o'clock, grabbed my board book, and was walking to the room elsewhere in Opryland where we were going to have our board meeting. And by the time I get there, probably took 5 to 10 minutes. It's like all hell's breaking loose. People are running around. What's going on? Well, a plane crashed into one of the World Trade Towers. And I thought, oh my gosh, you know, was it bad weather? And they said, no, it's clear. And somebody wheeled the TV in just about the time that the second tower gets hit. And then we realized what we're dealing with. And we also realized that our convention, you know, which we'd all spent a year working very hard on, there's no way that it can take place. But you got to be very careful about how you shut it down, because so much of our revenue was dependent on that convention from attendees and exhibitors and advertising and that kind of thing. So we had to work our way through all that, and that seems minor compared to what was happening to our country. But of course, they shut down the airplanes, so none of the journalists could fly in that day. Those of us who were there were kind of stuck and had to figure out. I can tell you a story that I called my boss, the general manager, Paul Fredrickson. I called him and I said, what do you want me to do? And like any good boss, he gave very succinct and clear answer, which was, Busiek, get your ass back here. So a friend of mine who was a news director in Denver, she went out to the Nashville airport, got a rental car, and they said, okay, but you can't leave town in it. It's for in-car rentals only. And she said, yes, sir. She came back to the Opryland Hotel, picked me up, and we started our long drive back to the Midwest. She dropped me in Kansas City, where my wife picked me up, and I arrived back in Des Moines 3 a.m. the next day and was in the newsroom at 8 a.m. The day after 9/11. But it was just a horrible time in our history, but again, one of those times when you knew that your viewers were depending on you for every bit of information that you could provide.
Any humorous anecdotes after that serious one that come to mind from your career?
Yeah, so probably the biggest story that I had as a reporter also leads to a story that was somewhat humorous. In 1981, inmates took over control of the Iowa State Penitentiary down in Fort Madison. Now, that's not the funny part. But I had been down in Fort Madison the year before doing a series, a sweep series, and had made some contacts. And in September of 81, I was sitting in the newsroom late in the morning, and one of my contacts called and said, Dave, I don't know what's going on, but something big has happened at the penitentiary. I think you ought to get down here. So I grabbed a photographer. We chartered a plane and flew down to Fort Madison right away. I trusted this source. It had to be big. Because we got there so early, we were able to drive right into the penitentiary parking lot and walk into the administration building there and get into the warden's office. And then we learned that inmates had made homemade shotguns in shop class and had taken a bunch of guards hostage and a bunch of guard trainees and were currently in control of the institution. And one of their demands was to meet with the media. So my photographer and I were there. A radio reporter was there, and there was a reporter, I think, for the Des Moines Tribune was there, and that was it. By the time we got in to meet with the inmates, the State Patrol had sealed off the penitentiary. Nobody could get within a quarter mile of it, including any other reporter. Well, it turns out this is the biggest story on all the network evening newscasts at night. It's the lead story. And I'm sitting there about 6 o'clock, and we go in to meet with the inmates. We do an interview with them through a set of bars, and they're holding shotguns on the guard hostages, including the director of security. And I ended up sneaking out, getting back, getting an exclusive story. Later that night, the inmates took over the institution, set fires, murdered 2 inmates. The Iowa State Patrol donned riot gear and went in and had to basically forcibly take back the institution. So none of that is humorous. But the humorous part is when we flew down there in this little plane, the pilot, we all you can rent at the Fort Madison Airport, as you can imagine, there's not a great big fleet of rental cars. Because Fort Madison's not that big. So we got this little Chevy Chevette. So the pilot, the photographer, who was a big burly guy, and I piled into this Chevy Chevette. And back in those days, you'll remember, Cliff, that the cameras were connected by an umbilical cord to this big tape deck that you carried around on a strap around you over one of your shoulders. And my photographer, as he's getting out of the back seat of this little Chevy Chevette, he gets that umbilical hooked on the door of the Chevette as he's getting out and rips it right out of the connector in the deck. And so we walk into the warden's office, and we've got this cord is in pieces, and he somehow figures how to get that thing all pushed back together, but then the deck won't fire up. And we're sitting there, and the warden's going, okay, we're ready to have this meeting. Are you in, or should I go out to the police lines and get another crew to do it? He goes, no, hang on, we're working on it. So we call back to engineering, and they're talking us through it on the phone, and they say, well, there's this little fuse deep inside. And sure enough, we find this fuse. We got this deck in pieces, this tape deck. This little fuse is clearly blown. You can see it's all black. And they say, well, just replace that fuse. And well, replace it with what? We're sitting in a warden's office in the middle of a prison riot, and somebody gets the bright idea, well, do you have a car? I bet it's got a fuse box. So I'll be darned if we didn't run out to this little Chevy Chevette and just start grabbing fuses out of that thing left and right. And we popped one into the deck. It fired right back up. We screwed it all back together, and off we go to get the biggest exclusive of my career. We almost missed it.
That's a good story, Dave.
That's a good story. My God.
Yeah. It's a tumultuous time for journalists. What advice do you have for journalists, beginning and experienced right now?
Well, I think it's a good time to be in journalism. I'm very concerned about how under attack we are. I just think and I'm not making a political statement, but it's just wrong. I'm going to defend what we do. We are not the enemy of the people. We don't lie. We tell facts. And this is just common sense. Look, we have problems in this country and in this world. And we're never going to solve the problems if we can't agree on what the facts tell us that the problems are. And, I just think that we've got to fight back's not the right word, but we've got to be diligent to make sure that Americans and our viewers here in Iowa and our readers know what we do on a daily basis about how, I totally get it that the cable news networks have chosen sides. We've got to be very careful in local television that we don't ever go down that road. We get accused of it all the time, unfairly in my view. Because we come to work every day trying to hit the ball down the middle of the fairway. Our job is to do tough stories no matter who is in power. You know, one thing I'll say to fellow journalists who may be watching this is, we get far more complaints from Republicans and conservatives that we're somehow biased. And I just think, man, were you around when Chet Culver was governor? I mean, if you think that Chet Culver as a Democrat got positive press coverage, then you were not paying attention, because he got a lot of negative press coverage. It is our job to do tough but fair coverage on no matter who is in power. And I would argue that we do that and have done that throughout the years. So my advice is, do your job every single day. Do the job you best you can, just as we always have. But I think as an institution, we have to be diligent about informing people about what we do, how we do it, why we do it, and the importance of having facts that we can, that are, our job is not to solve problems. Our job is to report on problems and highlight problems so that folks in the Iowa legislature and the governor and in Congress, that they can solve these problems that we have in our communities. But we got to be able to agree on a basic set of facts first.
Very good. And what are your retirement plans, Dave?
Well, I will be out of here very soon, and I look forward to slowing down just a little bit. I've been a TV news director for 29 years and a reporter and anchor for 10 years before that and then 3 years before that. So it's been a great career. I wouldn't have changed a thing. I've absolutely loved it. But being a TV news director these days is harder than it's ever been. I've got a lot of experience. I think I'm pretty good at it. But it's just harder than ever to find good people, keep good people, keep an eye on all the things that you have to keep an eye on today. You know, when I started as news director, Cliff, we had a 15-minute noon newscast and half hours at 6 and 10. That was it. And now we're doing 2.5 hours in the morning and half hour at noon, 5, 6, 9, 10, multiple long morning newscasts, website, mobile, social. It's just a lot of balls to keep in the air for a long, long time. So I'm looking to slow it down a little bit, have fewer meetings, have fewer emails, and just enjoy life a little bit. We do have some travel plans. I'm going to play a little bit of tennis. I've got a whole bunch of books that I want to read, and just try and get in the best shape that I can for an old guy like me, to really get in some good physical shape and spend some quality time with my wife. So that's the plan. I know I'll get involved in some kind of charitable organization that gives back to the community in some way. I haven't figured out exactly what that will be, but I look forward to that as well.
Well, Dave, thank you so much. Visiting with Dave Busiek, the retiring KCCI news director. Dave, again, thanks and good luck to you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Cliff.